Okay, last week it was when to get rid of your clients, and this week is when to get rid of you.
Can you guys see my presentation?
You can.
Okay, good. All right, so when are we going to ditch the consultants? We've all been doing this long enough. We already know who some of the bad actors are in the industry, and so it's what tools can we give to potential clients who are looking to figure out, am I with the right consultant? So I looked at everybody's inputs and I did some more buckets, and one is lack of communication, over promising and under delivering, resistance to feedback, lack of industry knowledge, inadequate team dynamics, hidden costs and fees, ethical concerns, and failure to meet deadlines. I think those are the buckets I came up with. Anybody see anything I missed for a bucket for, when to drop a consultant? All right.
That's good.
Yeah, that is good. But I have seen consultants get angry.
Oh, well, I kind of think that falls into the bucket of inadequate team dynamics, because a lot of the times when I've seen consultants get angry, it's because it's a combination of two things: lack of industry knowledge and or inadequate team dynamics, because you've got two people who have conflicting views of industry knowledge. And so those are the two that I've seen. Has anybody else seen any other situations?
Mine was when they're resistant to actually doing what the requirements are. And that's a dynamic type of thing, because they can't convince the other people or make them understand what's there and why they need to do it.
Yeah, I think you go back.
Nellie, I added another one in Slack, and that's more like a positive one. Then I've seen one consultant, and he was so good and so accepted that he became part of the family, and everybody felt reluctant to let him go, and it needed another management consultant to get rid of him.
Yeah.
So that's not a negative thing about a consultant, but sometimes you don't know when to say goodbye.
That is true. It's consultants aren't a permanent solution. I mean, I think we need to remember that, because they're a temporary process. Eventually you want a full-time employee in your functioning in those roles.
And this might go into lack of communication, but style of communication.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a team dynamic thing. I really gave this list a look, and I think these are the right buckets. I think we could probably find each of the anecdotes we have in our experiences in one of those 8.
I'm not sure if it's a red flag, but going back to what Nellie said, you're done with what you came to do. Right. And that's kind of the hanging on to people, but you've done your work, you've trained the team, you've put in place what you needed to, you've completed your project.
We really like having them around. It's comforting, but the value has long since been wrung out of the individual.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to move to the first topic: lack of communication. This is one I've struggled with, and I'm not going to bucket the role I've seen it in, but it's like they don't respond to email, they don't respond to meeting invites, they don't just respond to requests for deliverable status. That really falls into that lack of communication bucket. Failure to even progress. One of the things that BQC has really evolved and focused on lately, we do a unique thing. We function as part of the team during design development. And so because of that, it's a little harder to create a project tracking, because we sprinkle in the QMS in the middle of design control, is part of there. But we've been really trying to come up with like a QMS overview. Where are we at? What are we doing? What problems are we seeing? What do we need to work on? And we're trying to reflect on that. We use Slack as communication and email. We always try to make sure that we're responding to something. And so that's kind of what BQC does. But you might want to look at how are you communicating status in a way that they can take it to the board. And that's really what I've been focusing on lately, because clients don't usually ask for the information, but when you're giving it to them, it just makes them feel better and it keeps your relationship positive. But if you're not getting that communication, it might be time to consider, is that an A+ client consultant that I want to keep on? The impact is misalignment of goals, deadlines, and potential project failure. Any feedback or anything anybody wants to add to communication?
But I was just in a meeting 3 days ago with a new client. And and at the end of the meeting, I said, now, are there any things that will help you in your meetings when you go to your project meeting every day on this? Like milestones and things like that. And I just started writing some down and sending them to her. We've got this, estimated complete on this, percentage complete is this. And she said she didn't even need to present that to them, but that would help her make a good case for how things were going. And it would demonstrate that she was aware of what was going on with the project over on my end. So that's sort of like the opposite case of this. But if you have somebody and they're not communicating where they are on the project, and you don't know how many hours they're spending on it, and you don't really know what they're doing, they're just, well, I'll call you when I get it done, or some silly thing like that. Those are the guys you want to edge out. You want to find somebody else and sort of edge that other guy out, unless, you can have sort of a come to Jesus moment with him and make him understand.
Yeah. One of the things BQC, so we are internally analyzing, just ourselves. And one of the elements we're kind of focusing on, and it's in the communication realm, or actually professionalism, is, coming to meetings looking good, look the job that you want. Don't come with messy hair. Don't, wear a decent style shirt. I get it. We're on Zoom, but believe it or not, how you look in Zoom, make sure your background isn't inappropriate or displeasing. And also how you communicate. There is somebody on one of my teams that will take a meeting in bed. Literally, you can see her headboard right behind her. And it's like, okay, this could be expanded in the method of communication. Are you presenting yourself in a manner that looks professional, that kind of carries out, hey, I'm a good communicator? Any other feedback?
Nellie, you are a consultant,
Yes.
and usually you have more clients than one.
I usually have anywhere from 5 to 7 clients at a time.
So what happens if you're supposed to do some work for one client, but you know that there's more priority to another client?
I'm actually very transparent with all my clients. We talk about our deadline. They're very aware that they get so many hours a week that we've already agreed in a contract. Most of them use way more of it. They want you to promise to keep them in this hours and bill at those hours, but they want you full time. And so I'm very transparent and saying, hey guys, here are my priorities with what's going on with you and other clients. If I might away for a couple of days because I'm really focused on this other project, but I'm very clear and they know what's going on with my business. And I feel that that's how I do them justice. It's like I have a client that's got a 300 parts project. It's pulled me, I'm doing about 30 hours a week for this to get this all released with my team. And I'm just telling my team, hey, I'm going to be really low profile for the next couple of weeks. I've got to deliver this. And if you need something urgent, call me and I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll help you. And that's how I make sure that they get a hold of me. So.
Nellie, hi everyone. Good morning. Nellie, for us in a consulting firm, it's a regulatory affairs consulting firm. We have a very tricky situation, which is when we submit the applications to the regulatory agency. There is a big unknown on when we're going to receive approval. And here, what I've implemented is that we do monthly updates to our clients on all of their statuses. And that is every consultant has to send that email. And we're working into improving that because it's very time consuming on a monthly basis. So we're trying to expedite that email. But here in my service agreements, where a client could come back at me is if there's negligence, right? If there's negligence on following up on their service, even though there are setbacks, even though there are times that I cannot control that are not in my I'm not able to control the times of the regulatory agency, right? Or when they don't send me the documents on time, the client, right? So here, responsiveness from my team to the clients is very important because we cannot show that there was negligence on our part, like unreturned calls or failure to provide updates.
One of the things, so this is not in the industry, but believe it or not, I used to work at State Street Bank like 25 years ago, okay? Corporate lending group. And we were in the middle of a very hot lend. And the company was calling me every 20 minutes. And I was young, I didn't know any better. I just started ignoring their calls because there was nothing I could do at that time, because the senior management that was going to approve the loan was all in this huge critical senior staff meeting. I got canceled, and it's something I've taken with me. It doesn't matter how many times I call, pick up the phone and say, I'm working on it, because not answering the phone just makes people start to panic. And if you keep answering the phone, even when they're angry, just be empathetic and angry with them. And say, hey, I'm working on it. I'm just as frustrated as you. So that's something I carry with me. And like, if I can't pick up the phone, I'm in a meeting, let them know what you're doing.
Well, however, so I think some clients do pass that line of they want over communication, but you also have to like set your expectations on when you're going to communicate. And instead of us providing updates left and right, like pulling us everywhere, we are communicating with our clients like, this is what you should expect from us, and this is what we're going to do, right? Because it's hard to try to answer all the calls, all the emails, and all that.
Well, I think you're in a tricky situation because everybody's watching the pot boil, and they're like, who's going to see the first bubble? And they're all waiting for that information. So that I think what you put together is pretty great. Over-promising and under-delivering. This is one of the areas I really personally had to focus on. But if you have a consultant who promises unrealistic timelines, they say, hey, I can get a 300-part project released in a week, or I can get it in 2 days, or or I can get all your drawings released in 1 week. Those are things kind of red flags, because those are activities that actually take quite a bit of time. And I'm just throwing a few examples out there. I'm sure everybody has them. Anybody who's guaranteed rapid success, you might want to really consider the quality of the success, because with speed, there is a cost for speed. You start to lose your credibility, your wasted time, your resources. So if you're having a consultant who puts together a schedule and it is always rapid or aggressive, you might want to just really think, is that the right path for you? Because it sounds great, but if you have to remediate, I always tell people remediation is 3 times the original cost to do the work. That is my golden rule. So,
Nellie, you hire a consultant for something you cannot do yourself.
right.
So you're not on an even level on how to value the proposition of the consultant. So he can make unrealistic promises, but how can you filter that out if you don't know he's doing something you can't?
So one of the things I do is if it looks like it's a very aggressive line and it's a big task, I start to ask, okay, can you tell me what the process is going to be? What's the time standard for one? So I can kind of start to figure out if their planning tools are effective. That's the best way that I can do that, because once you get into the concepts of time standards and how long does it take, like for example, how long does it take you to do a drawing? How long does it take to process the DCO? And how long does it take to do that? So I have 300 of these, and you're telling me you can do that same amount of count time in 1 week. So that's what you want to get when you're talking to your consultants about, hey, you may not know the task, but they should know the time standard that it's going to take to do that task on an average, not an exact, but at least enough for you to figure out the schedule may be too aggressive. Any other questions? Resistance to feedback. Somebody talked about this, consultants who are defensive, dismissive of feedback. They just ignore you. They're just like, you don't know what you're doing. You need to do this. This is a fine line, because usually clients hire a consultant because they don't know what they're doing. So they've hired the consultant to do the job. But you have to kind of make sure that the consultant knows where the company's vision is. And so that's one of the things we do at BQC is we're starting to do this, is what is the vision of BQC and what is the vision of the client? Are we going in that direction? If everybody's not going in that direction and you're asking your consultant to change things, and I actually struggle here because I'm pretty stubborn, and I put together a QMS that I think is pretty effective. And when you change one thing, it breaks linkages. And so people don't always understand that. So I'm really protective about it. I've had to step back and go, you know what, just because this works for 80% of the people, I do need to be flexible and take feedback and adjust it for other people. So this is an area that I personally am working at, but I do take feedback very well on other areas. But when it comes to my system, I'm a little more stubborn on it. So you want to see how acceptable is the consultant for taking feedback. You can take the feedback. You don't always have to do the work. A lady is always graceful no matter what. So that's the new motto I keep telling my team. This is a big red flag, lack of industry knowledge. You know, they don't understand the industry or the market, or they think they do. Or, you know, they specialize in class 1, but not class 2, or IBD versus this, you know, or over the counter. There's a many different ways. The medical device industry is small, but yet it's got a deep knowledge base. There's so many things you have to know. And one of the things you want to ask yourself is, does that consultant know, or do they actually say, hey, you know, I might not know this. I know somebody I can follow. That's one of the things I do is like, hey guys, this is unfamiliar territory. I've got a few of my team members I'm going to call, and, you know, I'll call Maureen, or I'll call, I've called Michelle, I've called Rob, you know, hey, what do you think of this? Does this make sense? Am I, you know, am I going the right way in it? And sometimes I may have the knowledge in the industry, but I might need to think about readjusting it because the way it was working before isn't working effectively as well. And so you want somebody who's willing to research and change their mind or learn something new. And if they're not willing to do that, that's a red flag when you might want to think about ending that contract, because you don't want them to waste your time and your money. Anybody have some anecdotes they'd like to share on this slide? I think the problem is we all are experts on this group. Inadequate team dynamics. Poor team, conflicts, you know, backstabbers, you know, people who choke off communication with the senior management team, disagreements. You know, this slide really gets into, and I really, as a company, I'm really looking at that, is the performing, storming, and norming. And one of the things, because I function as part of the team for most of my clients, is there's that natural course of performing, storming, and norming. And then what I've observed is about, because my clients, I'm usually with them 3 to 5 years. And so I've noticed about year 2, you could be really performing really well, and then the team resets and they start storming again. It's the weirdest dynamic that I've seen. And so you have to be open to, okay, do we have to step back and start having a team dynamics conversation? Do we have somebody who's just very disrespectful? I do have somebody on my team, not my team, excuse me, one of my clients who was very disrespectful to me. And even though I was being respectful and I was doing great communication, I was still in that relationship. And then my team came back and they said, we don't want to work for this client anymore. We don't like how they treat you. And so, you know, that's something you want to look at, is how is everybody treating each other? Because at the end of the day, you all are in the same foxhole. You got to be respectful to each other. And so if that's not occurring, it's time to consider if you want to keep that consultant. Anybody have any feedback here?
Yeah.
Yes, there are cultural differences in how to be respectful. We are Dutch, we are notably blunt. Like Americans always, when they get feedback, they overload with compliments, and they have a tiny little bit of advice or criticism, and then they end with a load of compliments again. It's a great presentation, Nellie, by the way. And the Dutch are more blunt. They first say, oh, it's a great presentation, and then they think it's good to give as much advice and free advice and criticism as possible so that you can learn from it. And when you're in a multicultural group, then it can be totally different. Like if you have Japanese people in your group or that, then it's very much unpolite to give criticism to the leader directly, because then you undermine his authority. And you should wait with your criticism to keep them apart, one-on-one, say what you want, and then come back. And it's a way that Japanese people feel comfortable with. They feel secure when they know that they're protected by their higher in rank. While the Dutch, they're so blunt. If my boss says something that's totally crap, then nobody will hesitate to say something about it. So it's sometimes in a multicultural environment, it's hard to find the right tone for everyone.
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm a wallflower. I'm just as soft as they can be. I never, ever am blunt.
I'm sorry, you're a wallflower?
No, actually, I have been told I am very blunt and direct. You know, it's like,
But
and
you were seeing if we're paying attention, or?
I was. I thought I put a little funny humor into there. I really had to personally work on reading the room. Believe it or not, that's the tool. Read the room. There are some people I can be blunt with, and it's perfectly fine. The relationship's not going to be harmed. There are other people who can't handle the blunt. And so I and the great thing is my partner, Paige Bushman, she's usually with me on 80% of my meetings. So she'll come back and say, whoa, Nellie, you really went left field. You might want to repair that. So she's completely the opposite of me. And so it's a nice balance of having somebody, if I can't read the room and I'm too much into the conversation passionately, if you can tell I get very passionate, she can actually help me notice a flag that I might have to go talk to that person. And so if you have had a meeting where you feel like that communication just didn't go well, or the team didn't go well, have the conversation, go in and own it and say, wow, I really put my foot in my mouth. I'm really apologetic. Because believe it or not, if you can't do that, then they should be thinking about why they want to have you on the team. I mean, somebody had an uncomfortable conversation with me last year. I said something that was out of, I didn't mean it the way it came out, but it came out inappropriately. And that person called me up and we had a nice conversation, and it was like, oh, you know what? I'm really going to think about the words I'm using in this arena. And now that friendship's even better today because I did that. But because that person did that, she gave me the chance to reflect on the words that I was using and realizing I didn't mean them the way I intended it. So if somebody's offended you even, reach out to them, have that conversation. Don't go run to your manager or run to somebody else and say, oh my God, Nellie said this. Ask the conversation. Did you intend it to come that way? Because
Eddie,
yeah.
Eddie, they have emotional intelligence testing now as like part of boot camp before Wharton starts.
Oh, really?
I wish I had that.
Yeah.
It would have been a real eye opener. I'm not telling a joke, Stockton. I'm serious. It took me
No, I'm
2006
totally with you.
when Bethy insisted that I see an executive coach. And I took this test and it was like, oh my God, I had no idea.
I had no idea or no emotional intelligence.
Covered this. But I will say that one of the things that came out of that executive coaching is, and I think to a person, everyone on this call knows this, I'm unwaveringly me. And because I am that way all the time, you know what you're getting. So if I'm too much, you can say, thank you, and we're not a good fit. I'd rather you know that now before we start working. And then it's like, hey, this is not, then we both are disappointed.
So one of the things is early in my career in life, I'm a too much personality. You either love me or you just can't stand being around me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. When I was in my early career, all my reviews were about my personality. It wasn't about the stellar work I was doing. I was beating deadlines. It was like, well, you're too aggressive here. You laugh too loud. You do this too much. You do that too much. And so then I started twisting myself into knots, trying to be somebody different. And when I did that, I realized I was even making bigger mistakes of my, my communication. So then I just did a reset and said, okay, this is who Nellie is. This is true Nellie. She has good intentions, but I have to build relationships that people can come to me in private and say, hey, you offended me. And so that's really where I've worked at it, and it really embracing who I am. So you just have to know who you are as a communicator, because if you can't do that and you can't lead a team or be a part of the team, you're going to be a consultant that they're going to want to end a contract with. Any questions?
No, but I have therapy available for anyone who needs it.
Just total sidebar. I just saw that Ed was on, and Ed had huge news this week.
We'll get to that. We're not going to let the call end without celebrating Eddie.
Yeah.
Well, now it's like we don't. Thanks, Michelle. Ed, what happened this week?
Hey, everybody. We're thrilled that we made a press release about achieving our CE mark.
Yay!
Congratulations!
Thank you very, very much. And
Everyone
we've
who
actually
has one, raise a glass or mug.
Cheers!
And our successful friend.
We've had a little interest as well from a couple of online journals like BioWorld and another one I've never heard of, Global Data. So hopefully it'll get extended out a little
You were
bit further.
featured in the Hage Street Journal, so that was good.
There you go. Yep.
Stockton Today, I think, is running an article today.
So yeah, so we're really excited. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Just to get back to this, but congratulations, Ed. That's amazing. So happy for you. Hidden costs and fees. So I know everybody tries to be transparent. Sometimes it's just hard. because things cost a lot of money, and time and labor isn't always an easy tool to calculate. But I do try to give my clients some, transparency of what they're doing. But if, I have seen consultants, it's like, oh, here's my fees, but guess what? Now you're going to get, this fee and that fee, and now we need to add this service. What I try to do when somebody's hiring me is to hire me and running events, you need an electronic signature, you need a database, you're going to have user counts, you're going to have this is what the cost of the documents are, this is the labor cost. I try to make sure they have all that, but sometimes there are hidden stuff that you don't think about, and so you just got to be very transparent. If you're finding that your consultant, it's one-off hidden fees, it's kind of standard business because you just can't always plan for everything. But if you're finding that at the end of the day, your cost fees is outrageous, then you might want to consider, is that consultant really giving you or understanding the business model that you need to make sure they can be transparent in their costs. Lack of clear deliverables, unclear, vague, confusing, scope creep, dissatisfaction, and this goes to kind of, to the point of it's two-sided, or it's, you don't know what you're doing, just trust me, I'm going to do what needs to be done, and you just need to sign off on everything I do. That's not really an effective consultant. And so you want to make sure that you kind of understand, what needs to be delivered on implementing a QMS. So one of the things that happens to my business model is they hire me to implement a QMS, and then in the middle of it, they go, now I want you to run my design control files. Now I want you to do this. And so they do a scope creep. And so we were having a hard time communicating that. And so now we have a QMS overview that shows everything that's going on in the QMS, including other projects. And so that way they have awareness where the extra hours are coming in. And we're very detailed on our invoices. It's something we were very generic, and now we're moving to detailed. So you want to know where your money's going. So if your project deliverables aren't clear, if they say, hey, here are the 10 things you need to do, or here are the 20 things you need to do for phase 2 of design control, then you need to say, well, do they know what they're doing, or are they just kind of what I call bumper carring it, which means they're guessing and they're using their little walls to kind of, oh, I need this, and now I need this. I'm going to keep going this way until I figure it out to the end. You want somebody who knows where the end is. Any questions here? Ethical concerns. I've had 2 ethical issues in my experience that have ended contracts where I've ended them, but it is the same for, clients who need to consider consultants. Are they truthful? Are they honest? Are they, we all have been there. The client comes, do we really have to do this? That's usually how the conversation starts, right? And then it's like you're going through the options of being able to do it. Here's the A+ path, and here's the B+, and here's the C path. And if that consultant is, recommending something that's not, again, that violates a standard or regulation or requirement or procedure, you really want to double check that client and make sure they understand it. Now, if the client says, hey, we can do this, but we have to update a procedure, that's an ethical method. But if they say, hey, your procedure says this, but we'll do this anyway, and they don't even recommend updating the procedure, that's an ethical concern. Some other ethical concerns is, do they complete documents correctly? Are they honest? This is one of the areas I struggle with, because I've worked so close with my clients. If I'm working with somebody that has any, ethical issues, it impacts my business because it makes me look bad as well, and vice versa. So, we all know what ethical concerns are, our boundaries and lines. So you want to just make sure that you guys are all on the same page between client and consultants on this issue.
And if you get the other way, like I've worked with clients where I think their ethical methods are very questionable, that's when I cut out too. So I hate to say some of the stuff I've seen. Anyway. Like I said last week, when I was younger, I thought I was a warrior and I could fix everything and work with anybody. And now I realize I don't have to. And so that's really what you have to empower yourself is. There are plenty of people out there looking for people in our industry to work with them because they're just new and they don't understand. You don't have to work with somebody who doesn't want to do traceability of their devices for clinical studies, who doesn't want to do complaint assessments. Those are, who doesn't want to do reporting to the FDA. You don't have to be, those are the areas where I kind of see the unethical boundaries in my industry, or in our industry, excuse me.
One other thing that's kind of, and this worked with the previous presentation too, but if you're looking for somebody and you can get someone you know to recommend someone who is doing consulting for you, that's a real big thing. Because when you got to this ethical thing, it just sort of shone out with neon lights. I've got people that I know about that I would never recommend to anybody. You'll never hear their name from my lips if you're looking for this or that. They simply won't get repeated because I know they deal unethically.
Yep.
But if I suggest somebody to you, if you say, Rick, who do you suggest for this? And I do that, well, I'm putting my name on them too. But the nice thing is, you know, you're getting somebody who's been vetted to an extent, and someone else knows that they are one of the good guys, you know, or one of the good girls, not to be sexist, but you want to know that. And when if I have to find somebody on the internet, I don't know if they're a good guy or a bad guy or indifferent.
You know, that's kind of funny. I didn't used to care about that. And you guys all heard me kind of joke about the lawsuit and the really big bully of a client that I had to deal with. And ever since then, if I'm bringing on a new client, I stick a page on them. I'm telling you, she is stealthy. She does like investigative work and says, ooh, we don't want to work for this client. They've had these lawsuits. They've had this, and they've got this reported on them. So she'll investigate for me and vet the clients. If the client hasn't been referred to me, if that client's been referred to me by somebody I respect, I'm probably not going to dig into it. But if it's somebody who's just reached out to me blindly, I'm going to do a little more work, because it's damaging to my team to work with somebody who is problematic as well. I have to go into team maintenance mode, fixing the relationships in the team that are frustrated. But getting back here, failure to meet deadlines. This one's kind of, you know, the challenge of it is scope creep. If the client's doing scope creep always, it's really kind of a hard expectation to meet deadlines if they're kind of changing the end game all the time. So you really, as a company, you need to understand, am I changing the goals all the time to where they can't meet the deadlines? So you need to, you know, kind of ask that before you use this as a measure, because, or am I giving the consultant the tools they need to meet the deadline? Because that's something I struggle with, is I don't have everything I need. And so, but if you've given them everything they need and you're not changing it, and the project deadlines are there and they're not meeting those deadlines, then you need to, first I would say, ask the consultant, what's going on? Are you overwhelmed? Do you have too many clients? Is my business not your priority? What incentives do I need to, you know, bump it up? Or is it, and if that doesn't work, then you need to say, you know what, you're not meeting my deadlines. This isn't working. Actually, I have 2 slides. Sorry about that, guys. Make sure let me go back here. Okay, so kind of a little bit of shorter meeting. That's 2 of them, sorry. Suggestions. One of the things that you've heard me talking about some of the things we've implemented to kind of come along these lines, but monitor your consultants, the deliverables that they're doing, open communication. If you can actually see a red flag early and say, hey, this is a concern of mine, what can we do to address it? You may not have to drop that consultant. It could just be, maybe they're having a personal issue, they're having a conflict, there's things going on. And if you're communicating all the time, you're going to be effective there. And then, you know, on the inverse, as a consultant, make sure you have good communication protocols in place that they can go in and understand everything going on. You know, choosing the right consultant is crucial. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but look at all the consultants here who do the same thing I do. They're fantastic. I would hire and recommend any one of them for any client, and they may have a better match personality, QMS wise, or their work patterns. So that, you know, it's okay that you might not fit with every client. Any questions or suggestions anybody else would add? All right, here's the down and dirty. You know, it is so easy to have the knee-jerk response to, I'm done with this consultant, their last day is tomorrow. I call it cutting your nose off to spite your face. Okay, you need to sit down and analyze the situation and understand what's good for your business before you end the consultant. You know, will me terminating this consultant immediately damage the team of the company? So if that's the case, come up with a transition plan. Say, hey, I'd like to have a transition. It's either a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, and come up with a transition plan and the deliverables I want you to meet. And what I do when we're decommissioning a client, we call it the QMS Bible or manual, and it says everything that we've done, why we did it, how we did it, and it's easy for me because I've kept all my notes and everything, and we put that together and we present that to the client. You want to see if your consultant can do something similar. What did I do? Why did I do it? What's the logic? Because If you're ending that contract, there's a high probability you're not going to want to go talk to that consultant again to ask them what decisions were made and why. If it's not going to damage them and it's just really a bad actor, it's really good to end that consultant as soon as possible. So you want to analyze the situation and make the right decision for you on how fast and the method you want to do it. Will the transition period help the team and the company? You know, sometimes once you have the communication that you're ending a contract, sometimes that's the Band-Aid that needed to be ripped off, because maybe the consultant's just as frustrated. And so it's kind of like, it's cathartic that everybody kind of starts talking about and decommissioning and pulling the information. And it's almost, it works out to be a nice transition for both parties. So that's kind of one of the things I advocate for. Will the consultant be able to deliver? So if you're having problems that they're meeting deliverables, maybe it's not such a smart idea to have a long transition. Maybe the transition is only information gathering and not any deliverables. So, you know, you want to do that. The key to keep, this is very important. This is a small industry. Do your best to end the contract on a positive note, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. That consultant may learn a lot, and maybe their ethical issues have been resolved because they've been bit. And now they're like, ooh, I went through this. I'm never going to do it again. Or maybe, you know, that consultant was going through something personal at the time, some health issues, there's some personal issues, and now, you know, there's a better relationship. So you just don't know. Always end on a positive note if you can, because one of the things that happens, it's that word of mouth. Like if I were to do something really stupid, I guarantee every single one of you would hear about it and you would say, ooh, I'm never going to refer Nellie because of this situation. That word of mouth has a huge impact on everybody. So, you know, if you can end things positively, just because you don't like somebody or it's not working doesn't mean you have to, like, you know, blow up the bridge, because if you can keep the bridge, it's a good thing to do. So those are my notes. I hope everybody found this value. If anybody has any contributions, you know, we've got 15 minutes.
I do.
Okay.
And I'm going to share my screen to do it. This is Michelle's closing slide. I have a personal problem with the Q&A page, or questions, as the last page, because you put so much work into the presentation, and then the slide that stays up for the last 15 minutes while people are talking just says Q&A, which doesn't capture anything. There's no, you know, I don't know how to get in touch with you when I want to follow up. I didn't realize that Michelle did, you know, due diligence, but now I do. You know, she's just shown her expertise in one area. Oh, I see she does many other things. Maybe this presenter impressed me. I could reach her for another thing. An alternative is, and I don't have a ready example for you, but you've heard the expression, when you're going to teach someone something, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. There's an opportunity to do that too. Now, this is not typical. We're making a presentation. This is friends getting together over a cup of coffee on Friday morning, and we're talking. But I couldn't let the Q&A page go by. You did it last week. I didn't have, you know, we were going over, but today I just had to share my marketing impetus with you.
Oh, I love the feedback. I love the feedback. Because I'm actually, believe it or not, starting to do training seminars. So that is excellent feedback that I can wrap up my slides with. So
In that case, I mean, while, you know, you can, as you saw, we had half the page talking about stuff and half the page picture of her and how to reach her and the like. If you're doing trainings, then I would definitely have at least a second to last page or a last page that says, here are the 3 main things you learned. I don't know about you, but, and certainly as I get older, I'm retaining less and less. I used to remember like most points out of a presentation, then it's like, I remember a few points out of a presentation, and then it's like, what presentation? Not quite, but you get the idea. So, you know, if 6 months from now, somebody remembers, yeah, we talked about red flags for consultants, consider that a win. And they go back and they find the video and they ask me for the slides or whatever. I always like to highlight the main takeaway. So
no, I really appreciate the feedback. I will incorporate that in. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Michelle,
So I definitely wanted to, I invited Sean specifically. He doesn't make it every week, but I thought that he'd be a really good person to add his voice to this concept. Now, last week we talked about how to get rid of bad clients, and this one's kind of the flip side of how to get rid of bad consultants. You've been very much on both sides of that equation. Do you have any anecdotes or insights to share with the group? And nice haircut.
This is fluffy hair day.
Well, that's nice.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean Smith. Is good to be here. Good to see a lot of familiar faces, and sorry I was late for your presentation, Nellie. It looks like it was really good. I would just add to what Joe was just saying about the final page, and even take that a step further, and put a program developed specifically for the people that have the problem that you discussed, and a enrollment into that program. Like,
Oh.
I mean,
Kind of
you're
like a funnel, a
actually,
lead. But and again, this is not the typical, but yes, for a presentation like that.
so you're doing a presentation, you get done the presentation, and then the last page of the presentation is rather, okay, consultants like to do the, contact us to learn more. Well,
Right.
why not be a little bit more direct and say, we have a program for you, and you can join our program, and our program is starting next month. Like, why not bind it by time? Why not? And then why not have like a testimonial from somebody who did the program, and then give the person a reason for wanting to reach out to you in a time-bound fashion.
Now, Sean and I make a good team for this reason, because now you've sparked me to say, on top of that, because,
Right.
on top of, after you do that, I conclude with, and I leave you with 3 options. Number 1 is say, thank you very much. That was a nice presentation, and go to lunch. Number 2 is take everything that I've said and do it yourself. Absolutely. I've given you all the tools. I told you how I do it, and go do it. Or number 3, hire someone to do it for you. And that's what I do all day for clients. And here are some testimonials or something like that. But let them know that they absolutely can just go on with their business the way they did before they heard you, or incorporate these themselves, or hire you and the like.
This is great. I'm getting free advice. I'm taking it.
Well, that's what you gave us some, so that's what the community is about. And you'll have a chance to meet Sean in the week and a half as well. And this was my good news today, as well as Hyben. The Dutch are coming to California. I just learned that this morning. So, Maren has agreed to be our speaker next week, and I'll put her on the spot. I don't know if you've arrived at a talk title.
Well, I have multiple things that I can talk about, because I always
We'll take a show of hands. Who wants which one?
But top of mind right now is we just had a local Life Science Innovation Northwest conference here in Seattle, and some of the reporting information from that was just the state of investment in Washington life science companies. And I know there's been some good news in some of the health sector, so I could do kind of a summary of what's been going on with investments in the medical space.
Now, I know Marvin was out here, but he lives in Philly. Why was he out here for that?
Well, he had multiple reasons for being out here, and we actually got to spend quite a bit of time together yesterday and the day before, which was fun. But he had applied to Flywheel as well.
Oh, okay. I saw just now that it's in Wenatchee.
Yeah,
Going on right now.
that was the
You must
reason
have seen
to come
Caitlin
out.
this weekend, yeah?
Yeah, and he's got other business contacts out here, so he had a few things that kind
So
of.
is he at Flywheel now?
No, Flywheel was Wednesday and Thursday.
And today?
Oh, is it? Yeah, he didn't make the cut for pitching there.
Oh.
So, but he had other meetings with lawyers and other people in Seattle. So he kind of planned his Seattle time around this week so he could be at LSINW.
Okay, good.
Which was really fun. So I could do that. I could talk a little bit about, we talked about supplier selections and all of that. I did a webinar a few years ago talking about the other things that you need to think about in your supplier contracts, like what kind of documentation are they going to do for you, and what type of access do you need to reports, and some of the
That one I think would be very helpful. In fact,
lesser thought of ones. That's one that I really like.
Paul D'Souza will also be joining us in a week and a half, and if you have the chance to, let's at least make sure he's on that call if you don't have a chance to talk with him ahead of time.
I can pull that one out and clean it up. I think it's a really valuable one particularly for medical companies who often focus on just the QMS aspects. And there's a lot of business aspects with supplier contracts. And I'm sure all of you on the call also will have a lot of good thoughts on that. So let's plan on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we are, let's see, T-minus 12 days until Hugs and Ice Cream. So I'll see most of you then. Until then, bye for now.
Thank you.